Also, we have an opportunity and a pleasure to welcome Heather Paul into the room. Heather is a Crew and Thermal Systems Division lead for strategic communications here at JSC at the Johnson Space Center and the engineering directorate, right? And Heather is I'm really pleased to have her come and join me. Thanks, Heather, for
Oh,
coming.
it's my pleasure. Thank you.
We just saw Karen talking about career choices, and I asked Heather to come by and talk to us about her own career choices and how she got where she is. So I'll let you start by just tell us a little bit about how you got interested in space in the first place.
Sure. Well, my interest in space started when I was actually a very young child. I was one of those kids who was always asking if I could go outside to go look at the stars. And I loved looking at the moon, the stars, trying to figure out where the constellations were. My favorite constellation is Orion. It's the easiest one for me to spot in the night sky. And really, that interest in space began with that kind of astronomy interest, but then it grew as I learned more in my science classes about black holes and the planets. And my favorite thing to draw when I was in art class was the solar system. So while all of my friends were drawing homes and their pets, I was drawing the sun and all of the planets in succession. So it really is something that I think I was destined to do, to come work in the space program and help us develop technologies that we can use to live and work in space.
So you really thought that as a young age. You said, I really want to work. So young people sometimes don't make those decisions that early on in their careers. But when you got a little older, did you start trying to look at in terms of education? You can talk about your educational background if you made the choices that would lead you specifically here. But did you set any professional goals for yourself, even as a young age?
Well, that's an interesting question because I actually grew up in a very non-engineering type family, and in fact, I could dance before I could walk. So I have a very artistic and creative side. I've danced all different forms of dance. I played piano and clarinet. I sang. I won't sing for you today because now I'm terrible, but when I was young, I had a wonderful voice. So I really grew up in this very artistic family and foundation. But when I was at school, as much as I loved my arts classes and literature, I really had this strong affection for math and science. And I really was drawn to those subjects in such a way that I wanted to figure out what I could do with that knowledge. And of course, then my interest in space, I thought, well, I have to be an astronaut. And then I started getting older and realized that that's pretty competitive. And I said, okay, well, I'm still going to shoot for that goal of living in space, but what's the next best thing I can do? Be an engineer. And that's what I really strived to do throughout my education, is figure out what classes I needed to do to become a really good engineer for NASA and maybe one day an astronaut like Karen.
Right. I think that's what a lot of people, they strive to be. They think, I want to be an astronaut when I grow up. But there's so many different fields, in certainly in the aerospace fields, specifically here at NASA, and even more specifically here at the Johnson Space Center. There's so many different career fields that put you directly involved in what happens on that International Space Station right now. It's quite intriguing, but now talk a little bit about specifically how you ended up at NASA, and I guess your whole career has been here.
Yes. I've worked here for 18 years now. I just celebrated last week my 18-year anniversary, so I'm excited to say that I am a late teen in my NASA years. But I actually started out here as a student. So when I was majoring in mechanical engineering and Spanish at Auburn University, I was one of the lucky few that got a job here as an undergraduate student, and I was able to alternate between going to school for a semester and then coming to work at NASA. And it was an amazing way to get a better understanding of all of the theories and all my homework and design projects that I did at school, how I could apply that to not just engineering projects, but engineering projects that were going to fly in space. And so I was able to take a stroll through life sciences for a while and learn how the body is affected by microgravity. I spent a lot of my time in our engineering directorate designing space station tools and hardware and evaluating spacesuit materials. I was a rocket scientist for a very, very brief time, realized that my experience does not lend well to propulsion techniques, so I'm going to leave that to the experts there. I also was in mission operations for a while, learning how to work in a place like the flight control room here to help the astronauts while they're doing their day-to-day operations.
Right.
But my true love is really designing hardware for the astronauts to use while they're on board the space station and for future exploration.
And you, as you mentioned, you've worked in a lot of different areas. Diversity in your portfolio or your professional portfolio. Some people want to focus on one thing for their whole career, which is great, and some people want to work in different areas and get a diverse background, and I think that's a good example of that. And the opportunities are could be endless in terms of where you can go with the educational background that you have in particular, right?
Absolutely. In fact, when I was a student here, as I mentioned, I could kind of hop around. Once I've settled into my current role in Current Thermal Systems Division, even within our fantastic team, there are so many different opportunities for projects, whether I want to work flight hardware that's on board the station now, or even sometimes more exciting, looking at what we can do to design hardware if we go back to the moon, onto Mars, or
Hmm.
explore an asteroid. And as you mentioned, the diversity in careers, the diversity in opportunities is just as diverse, if not even more so. And as a mechanical engineer, even though that's my foundation in education, I've worked as an aerospace engineer, an electrical engineer, a chemical engineer, a lot of different opportunities with that mechanical engineering foundation.
And now, and not only with that foundation, now Heather, obviously, she not only reaches out internally in the work that she does, but you also now, do quite a bit of external work as well associated with getting the word out about what we do.
Absolutely. I think that's a very important part of my job and our job at NASA is to not only make sure our astronauts are safe and working well on board the space station, we're designing all of these new technologies and partnering with industry and academia, but making sure that the kids today realize that this is something that they can absolutely do and we need you. I like to say, Kyle, that we at NASA are just normal people that get to do extraordinary things, and I think that's really true. I'm just a normal
That's
gal who happens to have a really cool job.
Yeah, that's great. We both feel the same way, obviously. What's next for you? I mean, you've already in 18 years have done so much. Do you have any other goal or anything new that you're headed toward?
Certainly, of course, my ultimate dream is to become an astronaut. We'll see if that happens one day. But if not, I'm actually really happy being a support engineer for our flight crew. And what happens next, you never know. I always like to look for new opportunities. I love working in the engineering directorate here, and in my specific division, we've got a fantastic team of people that are doing such great projects. It's always really interesting. But, there's opportunities all around the center, and I'll stay tuned. Maybe I'll come back on and let you know.
Well, we'll look forward to that. And her favorite constellation is Orion. Of course, we're building an Orion spacecraft to go to deep space one day, and the commercial crew program is there to follow on the shuttle with a new crew vehicle to deliver astronauts to the International Space Station. So, along with a lot of other engineering activities that are going on around JSC, and not only here, but at other agencies or other centers around the agency as well. So, as you can tell from Heather, she's one of a lot of people that support what goes on not only here at the Johnson Space Center, but at NASA in general. And we really appreciate you coming by and talking to us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Any chance that I can get out and talk about the wonderful work that we do here, and more importantly, the wonderful people. It's just such a great family and such a great team, and it's my honor absolutely to work here.
It really is. It's a great bunch of people to work with, and all the flight controllers here, they all say the same things. And so, again, we appreciate you coming by.